Hello, and welcome to another episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. Today, my guest is the dynamic Trinette L. Collier. Welcome, Trinette. Please tell us more about yourself and how you got started, what it is you do, all the good things about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor. I don't take these opportunities lightly, so I thank you for your time and having me. I am Trinette L. Collier. I am a certified relationship coach. That wasn't my first love. I am a former educator. So now I am a certified relationship coach, bridging the communication gap in relationships and just really building healthy relationships between men and women.
That is fantastic. And you don't know how on time this conversation is
Yeah.
because at the time of us recording this, this is now February 2024, and you may be aware we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but Risa Tisa broke the internet over
Yeah.
there on TikTok this year. And 50 episodes, 10
Yeah.
each, relationships. OMG.
Yeah.
Professional, what
Yeah.
would you what is your take on that situation regarding um just the whole relationship situation?
Yeah, it's funny, and when I say funny, her story, I didn't even watch all 50 parts. I was able to watch one episode, and I already made my conclusion because it's a similar story. In fact, it's a similar story to my story, Woman on Fire.
Mm,
That's how I got started.
mm,
So I released my book back in 2013. Of course, we didn't have TikTok then. And so when I released that story, it was about the my ex-husband and his lies and everything that we have been through and so forth. So for me, when I heard her story, I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's here we go again," you know. And unfortunately, it's not a uncommon thing, you know. It's just that she took to the internet to share her story, and I know people, she was getting backlash from it, but it's no different from a book. She just chose to, showcase it on internet. Um, but it is unfortunate that this person, this other human being, created such a story, and one thing I can say with her, um, she did take accountability in the beginning. She did say she was desperate and she wanted a family and she wanted, to be married. And I believe that's like the common theme, especially among women in a certain age range. I know that was for me. And so I had to meet that timeline. I had to meet that criteria. And when it didn't work out, this is when the eye opener, happens. This is when life lessons, open. And so for me, it opened up the journey of self-love. And that's where my relationship coaching came into place. It didn't happen overnight. It took me 8 to 10 years of healing. And so once I finished my healing journey, God allowed me to say, "Hey, you know what? I have some knowledge on this thing," and He led me into relationship coaching.
wow.
Yeah,
Stop trying to figure it all out by yourself. Let the professionals of Imprint Creations talk to you about ways your website can generate consistent monthly revenue for you so that you can live the life you love. Simply go to mprintcreations.com/contact. Fill out the form and someone will reach out to you within 24 hours.
Wow, that is really a lot and
yeah,
so well said. You literally just summarized the whole situation because let's talk about how most Black women, I won't say all, we
hmm
reach a certain age and that desire to have a family, and there may be pressure from family, friends, and society. And
yeah,
we want that. We do, most Black women do want to be wives
yes,
and be mothers and do all the things the right way. That sense of desperation and that sense of either having the self love to be like, he's not worthy of me.
Mhm.
Sometimes you compromise, sometimes you take less than what you deserve, but because the options in today's society are not that, what is the word? I heard someone say the dating pool in Atlanta is like it's got dog pee in it. So I will leave it at that. But that is so well said. To
Yeah,
your left, you have a book. Please
yeah.
hold it up. And for those who are watching us, Trinette is the author. Tell us more. Tell us more about this powerful book you wrote.
So this again, this was the catalyst to my new career. Woman on Fire is actually it's not a man bashing book. It's not, I wasn't bashing my ex-husband. In fact, in this book, I did not want to release it. I'm a journal writer. And so this book is actually from a journal of mine. I kept a series of journal, basically like she did with her 50 parts. It was journal entries. And so after the divorce, my ex-husband committed adultery. He had a child in the middle of with the affair.
Mhm.
While I was trying to go through, I was dealing with infertility. So in the midst of all of this, we were trying to have a baby, but yet, he had a baby and throughout his affair, the lies, the narcissistic behavior, all of that. But in the book, I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to focus on my part, my accountability. So I took to my journal once, and I had to acknowledge, yes, he did what he did. However, what is it that I didn't do, or what was the? I saw the red flags. I talk about it. The red flags were there, but
Mm.
because I wanted to be married at that certain age, and I wanted desperately to have a child, I took my color pencil green and I colored the red flags. I made them green,
Mhm.
So this is what I talk about in the book. And I want women to understand that there is healing after divorce. There is relationship. God blessed me to remarry. However, the message that I always like to convey is you cannot recycle the trauma. You have to go through a healing piece, and you also have to take accountability, which is the word that we don't like to hear for most women because we hear it's your fault, but it's not. It's just simply saying, listen, I did see some things in the beginning and
Yeah.
I tried to control it and I tried to fix it. And, you know, that's the kind of, that's what I had to step back and say, you know what? I saw him walking down the street. He didn't have a car. He didn't have his own place. He didn't have a job. He didn't have these things that I thought I was that I was worthy of. So it wasn't until after my journey of healing, like I said, it took me 8 to 10 years. It may not take the next person that long, but for me, because I had to go through a total transformation, is when I was able to go into a new relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is in your professional opinion, is it a heart issue or a mind issue?
It's a combination. It's a combination because we do, as women, and this is going to apply to both men and women, but most times we as women, we're nurturers. We're wanting to fix, men, and we're wanting to fix the situation. And I always say that we can't change anybody. We cannot change. Um,
Yeah.
my higher power, which is God, I believe in God, that too can change. I don't have that power. What I can do is pray for change. But oftentimes, and I was guilty of this, I tried to fit the man. I tried to change that person. So it's a combination of the mind and the heart,
Mm.
because we can be, I can only speak for myself. I could be manipulative in the situations,
Mm.
trying to get my way, trying to get him to change. And, so it's a combination of the mind and the heart.
Mm.
Yeah.
Before we step away from the conversation regarding Woman on Fire, I just want our audience to know that that book is available on Amazon as well as on Trinette's website, which is I am Trinette TrinettLCollier.com. So that is available on her website. And as you were speaking about love, well, relationships is about all these wonderful things, and we are in the month of love. All these wonderful things that you're going to share with us. Let's pedal back a little bit, because when you had first started to tell us about your career and your first passion, you have a beautiful resume. You're well educated. You really phenomenal woman. And there is a part where in your career you said your first love was education. So
Yes.
talk to us a little bit about how you went from the education arena into the relationship arena now.
Yes, when I was a child, my first grade teacher, Miss Flags, she was my inspiration to becoming
Mhm,
a teacher. I
mhm,
just loved the way she held her coffee cup and had the chalk in her hand, writing on the board. And I knew then that I wanted to be a teacher. I was always that child in the neighborhood during summer breaks. At that time, the teachers would give you all of the old stuff from the classroom, and I was actually teaching children on the front porch during the summertime. And so I knew, my parents knew, my family knew that I would be a teacher. So that was etched in my mind, right? I knew that I wanted to be a principal. I wanted to go elevate in my career. And so I did that. However, it wasn't, things started changing in education, 28 years in, and you saw the changes, and it began to take a toll on educators. During the pandemic, it's when I knew that there was time for me to exit. And mind you, I hadn't even reached the level that I really wanted to. So at this time, I didn't pursue being a principal or whatnot. That sort of shifted like 10 years prior. And so I love the classroom. I fell in love with being in the classroom. So I was good with that. But it wasn't until 2017, after the death of my mom, that I knew that a shift was starting to happen. Um, a lot of the educators, they would come by my room and they would always ask for advice on relationships.
mm,
It was always a safe space. My classroom was always a safe space before and after school, not just for the children, but for the adults. And I began to just, I'm big on confidentiality, so they knew they could trust me. And so I'm just like, you know what? It all goes hand in hand, building relationships, not only building healthy relationships with my students, but with my coworkers. And again, it wasn't until the 2017 that shift started. I had gone to back to school to get my certification in 2016 or so 2015, and then 2017 came, and I said, okay. And then the pandemic happened, and
mm.
I said, I can't teach anymore. Hardest. It was the hardest moment of my career, the most challenging. And I knew it was God's, way of saying it's time for you to shift. It's time to leave. So of course that was a pretty challenging moment to, leave from education to going into a new arena, even though it's similar, but it was, this was my home. Education was my home. Now I'm in a new arena. So that's how that took place.
Let's sit there for a moment, because let's just kind of explore what that was like between that season of realizing this is the road is ended. I got to move from here, because sometimes God does make it uncomfortable. The situation, even though it's your comfort, you could teach with your eyes closed, or you could
Yes.
have a skill set, you could know that job in and out. But for some reason within yourself, it just starts to get uncomfortable.
Yes.
And, I can definitely identify with work, with any other situation. But when that happens in a relationship, let's
Mhm.
talk about how that actually manifests itself when you realize either I've outgrown this relationship,
Mm.
or I've outgrown this friendship, or it's just time to move on. Because at some point when you realize, in business as they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So what
Yes.
happens when you realize I'm not, feeling the love or the growth or whatever you're supposed to be getting out of that relationship. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
What are some, if you were to give four key things, what would you recommend or what would you advise for people to kind of exit in a manner that's not detrimental to the other party?
That's a great question. I would definitely say that this is the moment where you would invest in a professional. And what I mean by professional coach or a licensed therapist or counselor. I'm big on, making sure that the person is qualified, because this is a integral part of your life and an integral part of the shift, and you do need that professional advice. During my transition from the classroom to this, I did invest in a transition coach, someone who can transition from career to career, because you think it's easy, but when you've been in profession for over 25 years, that's your home, that's your routine. So, it is challenging. And
Mhm.
so it affects every part of your life, not just your friendships, your relationship, but it affects you. So I would suggest you connect with a professional. And they have many coaches out there for relationships with your job, with your career, and so forth, and even therapy. I did have to go to therapy, not only for my mother's passing, but it all played a hand in hand with it,
Mhm.
because it was a loss. I am now losing my identity with education and going into something else. So it
Mhm.
was a mindset. It was a mind shift. So again, getting a professional coaching or licensed therapist or counselor. I will say also get a support team. Now, when I say a support team, it's not always going to consist of your girlfriends or your guy friends or your family members. Sometimes you need the outside voice who can see further than you do. Because I was always blessed to have a supportive family and in a supportive circle.
Okay.
So for me, it was great because I could rely on them. But sometimes I needed the outside voices, to say, "Hey, let's try this. Let's move this way. Let's try some networking. Let's get out of that comfort zone." Whereas your family and friends, they're going to give you that support. They're going to give you that love and nurturing that you need on the journey. But sometimes, like I said, you need that outside, influence, positive influence. Um,
Yeah.
also say you would definitely need to journal your your journey. Journal that. It's not going to always be easy. You have to stay focused and you have to write down the good, the bad, and the ugly of this journey, because that's the reality. It's not Instagram pretty. It's not, social media. It's not that. And some days you're just like, okay, did I make the right decision? Am I making the right decision? What am I doing? It may look like you have it all together, and you do, but sometimes you will question yourself. And so journaling will make you can write it down and you can actually see it, and you make some positive decisions from that. And the fourth thing I would say, just believe in yourself in every area. You have to believe in yourself. I love affirmations, and in back of me, I always make my office space vision, and behind me is part of my vision wall. And I have different prayers and affirmations surrounding me. So when I'm unable to call my friends or my family, I can turn my seat around and look at my wall. So I encourage people to have some type of affirmations in front of them, with them at all times.
That is powerful. Thank you for that. So well spoken and so well articulated. Thank you for that. Those are really great resources. One thing, Trinette, that I recall I heard you say was that while you were still, I'm going to go back a little bit, while you were still in the classroom, you had the wisdom or insight to get your licensing. And I'm just assuming that that was for the relationship phase of the next life. But what was it that you realized, okay, this is not going to work for me? Let me go ahead and get my certifications in this arena. Because that probably was not just you woke up one day, aha, I'm going to be a relationship uh, uh, per, uh,
Yeah.
therapist here. So how did that happen for you to, while you were still in the classroom and realizing this was not going to work, and you actually had the insight to be like, this is my next phase of the journey? What was it that led you to it?
Yeah, you know what? Again, being in the classroom, you're building relationships with your students, right? And I believe it was one day that you again we saw the changes coming about in administration and just the field of education. And I remember being feeling depleted. You're looking at your students every day. You're fighting the system. You're fighting for your students, and it was just a moment that I had in sitting behind the computer. And it was just one of those days, and I couldn't explain it that day, but it was just like a feeling of something is not right. And one of my prayers has always been for God to release me before I became a disgruntled teacher. I didn't want to become one of those teachers who just stayed in it for a check, or for the weekends off and all of that. My prayer was always, Lord, remove me before I do a disservice to my students. It's not their fault on how I'm feeling. It's not their fault because at this moment in my career, it's been 20 some years. So educators don't get that break, that breather and we didn't get that encouragement to say, hey, let's step back, let's take a year off. So we don't get that. And so it was left up to me to say, it's time to take charge. So the moment that I started feeling this, that's when I started looking into different careers. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the different assessments, personality assessments that our jobs would give us. And no matter what I would answer, it will always lead back to supporting, helping, education, coaching, therapist. And I'm just like, and I had taken about 4 of these tests, and it just every last one of them. And I said, okay. And I love psychology. I love therapy. That was like my minor in college, but I just didn't pursue it because I was trying to get out of school. So education was long enough for me. And I said, you know what, the coaching, I love coaching, and let me dig more a little bit into into this and see. And that's how I got started. I started, researching for credible schools because I didn't want to just, there are coaching programs out there that just give you a certificate. I
Yes.
didn't want that. And it's no shades. I just did not want that. I wanted to be the best, and I'm continuing my education in it. So I reached out to an academy that was one of the top in its field, and that's when I pursued. And it was another journey. It took me a year, um, but that's because it was a very intense program and it was a serious program. So that was the start of my journey.
Stop trying to figure it all out by yourself. Let the professionals of Imprint Creations talk to you about ways your website can generate consistent monthly revenue for you so that you can live the life you love. Simply go to mprintcreations.com/contact. Fill out the form and someone will reach out to you within 24 hours.
That's fantastic. I
Yeah,
have to say, listening to your story, it was also validated in the fact that you said that your classroom was a safe space for teachers
yeah,
as well as the students. So the fact that people came to tell you their deepest, darkest secrets, probably that
yeah,
was also something that you were doing, just authentically being yourself.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Let's kind of flip the gears here a little bit because you shared with us that you are a relationship coach.
Yeah.
You are a dynamic author with your book, Woman on Fire, and you have two podcasts,
Yeah.
right? The Testimony of Triumphs, as well as The Mail Room. MALE, not mail as in the United States Post Office,
Yeah.
but the mail room. Now that sounds interesting because I find that I identified, I'm a woman and I identify with all things female. But
Yeah.
talk to us about that podcast and how you encourage other men to, listen.
Yeah.
The
The
things you
mail
talk
room is very it's my baby. I struggled with it because it again, writing the book Woman on Fire, I wanted to identify with the women. I wanted to support the women and, help. And it wasn't until after in 2018, again, after my mother's death, that God downloaded that I needed to uh, pour into men, especially Black men. And again, I'm just like, no, that's not going to, work. I wrote a book about for women and so forth. But what it was that the men I found out over time our Black men did not really have a platform, a safe
about.
space for them to talk about love, life, relationships, the everyday things that they're going through. So I pitched the idea to a local internet radio station. They loved it, and it took off from there. And so it is a safe space. It's not just an ordinary. It's not one of those podcasts that we're male bashing. I have three male co-hosts, so it's definitely not a podcast where I'm male bashing or talking down or just continuing the cycle of trauma in our relationships. It's actually having solutions, that we can have in our relationships that's dealing with men. Because a lot of times our men really just don't know how to communicate with their loved ones because they haven't been given the opportunity. So the mailroom messages from him is just what it says. It's messages from them, and it's a safe space. And I'm so honored that the men have allowed me to do this. They're in shock whenever they come on and they're like, oh, it really is a safe space. I'm like, yes, it is a safe space. We're not here to, just we're on your side as women. So, and we need to hear you all. And so that's where it came from, the mailroom. I'm so excited about this project. This is going into the 6th year, and I'm watching it elevate and just grow. And it's a just a joyous feeling for it with it.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be campaigning that you be the keynote speaker at the Women's Annual Conference this year because you can
Woo.
come and tell all the juicy secrets that go I
Right.
I'd say that in jest, and of course I'm joking here, but
Yeah.
with your take in 6 years, what would you say are the top three things that men struggle with? Truly, just on the other side. Like I said, my world is all feminine. I know
Yeah.
about women. I am a woman. I
Yeah.
grew up with four brothers, but it's a different world. It's totally a
Yeah.
different world.
Yeah.
Um, so, what
It,
is your take on that? What would you say are the three things that men truly struggle with on a day to day, all
it
walks
it definitely is a different world. I have three brothers myself, and I'm like you. I thought I knew everything about men. Have a husband, grandfather, brothers, cousins, and when I started talking with them, they really want nothing but peace. They
of
want love. They want healthy relationships. They
life?
want peace. They
Mm.
really enjoy life, you know, but they are faced with the scrutinies of the world, especially our Black men. They have fears, you know. I found out that our men don't know how to take care of themselves, so this is the reason why their health is declining because they don't go to the doctor. They feel like, oh, I don't have time. I'm a man. I'm not supposed to do that. So they really don't they really don't know how to communicate what they're going through because they don't feel safe. They feel like if I express how I'm feeling, it's going to be taken out of context and then it's going to be used against me. And that's what I've learned over this period. They just really want to be heard. And that's been the key. That's been the consensus through from all of my male guests. They just want to be heard, honestly.
We're going to have to digest these one by one because I remember one of my really good friends, and she was a mentor. She still is a mentor to me. And she said, Maggie, do you realize that sometimes men lie to protect women? And I'm thinking to myself, but why lie in the first place? Because then you're going to have to cover up because I'm going to figure it out. And then it's going to be a fight. And then like we always do, right? And
Yeah.
it just became a real thing because I realized, but if you told the truth in the first place and
Mhm.
let that person feel the hurt or however bad or good it is, there
Mhm.
would be no need in the cover up. And her feedback was they don't want to deal with the disappointment of letting you down. And I'm
Yes.
like, but it's going to happen either way. You're just digging a deeper hole.
Yeah.
So the lies, to quote Candy Burris, the
Let
lies.
the right. It's the
The
lies.
lies. Oh my goodness. So that in itself kind of like speaks towards how do you have peace when you have if you're not even telling the truth because as
Mhm.
women we're going to talk and we're going to find out because
Yes.
that's just the FBI investigator in our DNA. So
You're right.
how does that transition to having peace and
Yeah.
feeling love and because now your blood pressure is going to raise up, you're
Yeah.
going to get stressed, all the things that you want, you're counteracting everything that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good question. And it's funny because a lot of women we have these same questions. But here's the take. Men do tell us the truth. We don't want to hear them. We don't we
Ooh,
don't want to accept what they say because how
ooh.
they say it and when they say it to us. And this is something I had to learn as well as a woman. That was my question. I'm like, well, why would you lie? And everything you said. But the truth of the matter is, they do tell us the truth. It's just not in the language that we want to hear it in, and they are blunt with it. So in our minds, it's like, no, that's not what you're saying. But for them, it's like, that's what I'm saying.
Mm.
I don't or I do. And so when in relationship coaching, this is the challenge that I have with some of my female clients. We don't want to hear the truth when the man is telling us. So that is, in their eyes, that's the piece. It's like, I want to be honest with you, I'm trying to be honest with you, but you're not accepting. And it goes back to that, we're trying to change them. We're trying to change how they speak, how they express. And they're
Mm,
just like, no, we're very simple, quick creatures. We
mm.
said what we said, and we're done with it. So yeah, it becomes that cycle.
To your point, I definitely underscore the importance. We saw it in real time here in Atlanta in regarding men not taking care of themselves. That
Hmm.
famous podcaster who was on YouTube, and he would really, I would say, tell the truth to callers, female callers who would call in. And I'm
Yeah,
not going to say any names, but you know who I'm
yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
And he unfortunately lost his life due to blood pressure.
Hmm.
And that's the silent killer. But had he gone to a doctor and,
Right.
shoulda, coulda, with all due respect, he's
Yeah,
deceased. I'm not going to say anything negative, but that part of owning your health, you're an
yeah,
adult. And the things that some women will automatically do and take care of, that and I fail to understand why that's not there
yeah,
for some men. I'll not say all, but some
yeah.
men.
Yeah, it's a battle. I remember my father, he passed of colon cancer, and it was
Mhm.
it was that constant battle. Dad, go to the doctor. And it was like, I don't have time. I have to, build the business or this, that, and other. And again, I remember my mom, go to the doctor, go to the doctor. And it was wasn't just him, but a lot of the men that I encountered over the years. It's like,
Mm,
"Go to the doctor. Why don't you go to the doctor?"
mm,
And it was the same story. I don't have time, or I can't slow down. And I'm like, but you need to slow down. It's okay.
mm,
However, what I've learned is because society has told them, the men,
mm,
that you have to be a man, you don't have that downtime, you can't take care of yourself, and
mm,
this is
mm,
ingrained in their mind, and so when they're in relationships, or if they're not, and they have their loved ones trying to get them to go to the doctor, it becomes that want, you
yes,
know.
yes,
And so you have to get to a point, and it's very hard. I was talking to some other wives. It's very hard, but you also have to get to the point where it's like, okay, I don't want to nag you into going to the doctor. However, blood pressure, stress, all of these, like you said, are silent killers, especially for our Black men. You know, I'm not a big fan of just pumping you with medicine. So so you have to kind of go around the situation and come with ease and come through another, another way to get them to see the importance of their health. Because we as women, we want the best for them. So of course we're
yes,
gonna go to the doctor, da 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 da.
yes.
They don't hear that, and it pushes them further away. So I've learned kind of go, ease it, throw in that softness, with them, like, hey, baby, let's go to the doctor together. Let's get this checkup, things of that nature. So I think that's just a way that we have to start thinking and realizing, because for some reason the men are just not going to the doctor like they need, and it's with urgency.
Mm.
And I continue to pray for our men, because again, we need them, and sometimes part of that, they feel like we don't need them,
Mm.
so they don't have to worry about going to the doctor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Trinette, you have offered so much. And for our listeners, Trinette is based in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But tell us what you have going on right now in this season. What is Trinette focused on? What are you offering? Tell us about how our listeners can find you online, all the good things.
Yes, I am based here in Metro Atlanta area. Right now I'm in the season of focusing on the mailroom. So we're growing our podcast. We are getting ready for our an event in September. That is our culminating activity. So that is called the Listening Room, the Listening Party, and basically it's where I have a panel of Black men, and they get a chance to talk, answer questions, and the audience sits back and listens. So this will be the fourth year. That is in September. So more information will be about that on the website. And that's all things relationship. As stated before, all things relationship, just bridging that communication gap in the relationship. So that's where my focus is, and just wanting to gather more Black men and providing that safe space, having them to come on, share their stories, and just really provide solutions. I don't want to keep the gender wars going. I don't want to keep the
Yeah.
cycle of trauma going in our community and in our relationships. There is healing to take place. There are solutions, and that's what I want to focus on, as we bridge the gap in the communication gap in our relationships.
I am so excited and happy to hear that you have this podcast, The Mailroom, because, like I said, everything in my world, I support women. I do all
Yeah.
these things for women, kids, everything. And I was told the other day, someone came up to me and said, Maggie, this was a young man, Maggie,
Mhm.
I listened to your podcast. And he went on and gave me this really good feedback. And then I realized I have missed opportunities over here in
Mhm.
talking to men. And
Mhm.
therefore, I encourage everyone to go out there and support and listen to the mailroom. But while you're doing that, be sure to like and subscribe Empress Conversations with Maggie. Get on that mailing list and find out the next things that are coming up, because we're definitely going to be having some good things coming up with this podcast and an upcoming live event in Atlanta. So stay tuned for that. As we continue to talk to Trinette here, let's talk about what is coming up for you in the next 5 years. You are a woman on fire, you're a woman of purpose, and I know you're already planning what's coming ahead. So give us a glimpse into what you got going on in the next 5 years here.
You know, when you hear 5 years, I used to be afraid of that, but the way the years are going, we're in 2024.
Yes, like
We're
what
literally just post 3 years from pandemic,
exactly?
you
I was
know?
just going to say that. Like how? How?
Right.
Oh,
When you think about when it first happened to now. And so that 5 years, it's like, oh, wow, 5 years, that's not too far away. And
no.
what I see myself, I want to create an anthology for men. I want to create a series for men. I want to elevate the mailroom messages from him. I want to provide more events geared towards men. And it's not to say that I don't want to work with women, but you know, again, as a woman, we have so many platforms for ourselves. We have
Yes.
so many outlets, yourself, we have so many positive and good platforms. And I just feel like for me, this is the direction that God has led me into. So I really want to just focus on building that platform. I don't want to take over men. I want to make that clear. I don't want to be the voice for the man, but I just want to be able to provide that space for our men, especially our Black men, in the next 5 years, because they're going to need it. They're
Mhm.
going to definitely need it, and so I just want to create good, positive, wholesome events. That's in the making. Want to just build a positive team that can just elevate the brand. So that's where I see myself in the next 5 years. And also traveling and being able to just make it work for itself, sitting on the beach somewhere in the Bahamas and just chilling for a moment, But that's where I see the mailroom and my endeavors in the next 5 years.
Good for you. One final question here that I have to circle back on. Your years in the classroom and the trauma that was 2020, when you experienced, when I think of teenagers and being social creatures, and the time that the pandemic happened, a whole year went by where they were isolated. And of course, teenagers today are, into video games and being isolated, but they don't, in my humble opinion, they don't get the opportunity to have friends and engage when and they could be friends online, but developing those in-person skills in terms of relationships, friends, and all of that, eventually these same teenagers will grow up and develop those relationships.
Yeah.
What is if you're to look into the future, what is your take on how that will affect young Black men moving forward because of that gap during those formative years of being isolated?
Yeah. Good question. I taught elementary education, so you can already see the gap in the socialization with the our young Black students and our Black boys, because they did start focusing on computer, video games and whatnot, not interacting. So what you're seeing now are the conflict resolution. We don't know. Our students don't know how to solve.
Mm.
So it's becoming, we did a mini study on this, and you're watching the children, because though that period of being isolated, you don't know how to interact with the other students. You don't know how to resolve conflict. You don't know how to release it and express. So what's happening? Yes, they're growing into these teens, into young adults, and they don't know how to interact with each other. We're unfriending people on social media,
Yes. Yeah.
we're sending, we don't know how to talk with each other. the language towards each other, the conversation. It is so harsh and it's so disheartening when you hear our students because they really don't know what to do because of the isolation period, so it's going to be very crucial that we bring that communication back. I love technology. I love technology, but I also love the human piece of relationships. So that is going to be very crucial within the next 4 or 5 years, bringing that human interaction back. And it's going to be a challenge because with AI and technology, that is going to be a challenge. But I feel like we can do it. We can definitely do it.
Trinette, it was an absolute delight having you with me today. As we get ready to close, what are your final thoughts? What would you like to share with our listening and watching audience? We're all ears listening to you.
Well, first of all, again, I thank you so much for having me on your beautiful platform. It's an honor. It's very positive. So thank you so much. I just really want people to understand that relationships are beautiful. They are beautiful. And, I really encourage us before we jump into new relationships to examine and heal. Take the steps to heal. There are steps to it, and it's okay. Embrace the healing part of your journey, because relationships are beautiful. That would be just my overall message, that relationships can work. They are beautiful, and it's okay to step back from toxic relationships. No matter who, if it's family member or close friends or whatnot, if it's not benefiting you in the most positive way, it's okay to step back.
Yes.
Because you have to put yourself first in it. And so I want people to understand that yes, relationships are beautiful, but you do not have to stay in toxic relationships. So that all things relationship for me, and I am available to support anyone who's ready to take that journey.
And tell our audience where they can find you again, please, online.
You can find me on my website at IamTrinetteLCollier.com. On all social media, I am TrinetteLCollier.com. And the mailroom, all things the mailroom 7671 on all platforms.
We did not talk about the testimonies of triumph. So you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Woman on Fire Testimonies of Triumphs, again, it's just a segment where women who've overcome triumph, who've overcome obstacles in their business, personal life, and whatnot. Because again, it's all people want to be heard, and sometimes you just need that platform. So again, it's that safe space for women to they want to share their testimonies because again, social media has a way of making glamming things up, you know, and you really don't know the back end of a person's success story. So you look at the now and you're like, oh, she has, she's doing this. And it's like, yeah, she's able to celebrate it because of what she went through. And again, it's not to, everybody doesn't have to share or whatnot, but it is a safe space for people to share, for women to share what they've gone through and how they overcame the different obstacles in their life. And so through that platform, through the book, I've been able to meet wonderful, oh my goodness, phenomenal women, that have just beat the odds, and they are now healed and they're living in their truth, they're living their dreams and so forth. So that's what that's all about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, Trinette, it was an absolute pleasure having you today. We'll definitely stay in touch. And to
Yes.
our listening and viewing audience, be sure to like and follow our podcast here. If you know of someone else who'd be a great guest to join our podcast, please go to the website, impressconversationswithmaggie.com/contact, fill out the form, and we will reach out to them. Thank you again. It was an absolute
You're listening
pleasure.
to
Have a
Impress
great
Conversations
day.
podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Yeah, yeah. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started.